congressional district, the third congressional district in Mississippi, right?
Yes, it's
And
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's right. Third CD in Mississippi. Yeah.
And you're running against a Republican as a Democrat, and it's a pretty challenging race, as I've read. Like, what do you make of it? How how do you see it so far? How's the campaign been?
It's going pretty good. I mean, I just try to focus on the stuff I can control. It's an uphill battle. Mississippi's got a red reputation, but this is actually, they say, statistically the most flippable of the districts. So I try to stay positive with it. We have the least amount of points to flip. And what I tell people who think, they ask me, is it really winnable? I say Mississippi's actually not as red, not as Republican as you think. It's a low voter turnout state. So the actual winners every year are the ones that don't show up to vote. So for us, we have the issues. America has its problems, and we talk about these things. But the number
Mhm.
one issue for us is turnout, organizing, trying to encourage people to participate. And we think the more people vote, the more chance we have to win. And that's kind of what I'm working to do.
Yeah, and something about certain states and like just certain I would say locations have a lower voter turnout, and I think we're seeing that across the board because people just are losing so much confidence in the government and just in politics in general. What do you think could be done to fix those specific issues? Because it's not whether people want to voice their opinions; it's just that they don't have the confidence in voicing their opinions because they just feel like no one's going to listen.
That's a good question. I think that's like the 69,000, whatever the saying is, the
Mhm.
$34,000 question. Um, it's a very, I thought it was kind of, we had problems with the system systemically. I did think we have problems. Now that I'm running, you can really see how easy it is to be corrupted and to kind of play the party line. And when I was younger and more naive, I thought that the best way to get myself elected and show that I was a good candidate was to be smart and have a plan and have an agenda
Mhm.
that could actually work. Like, normal things that have a work history, all the things that would maybe get you a job. I just thought that's how I would prepare myself. But that was a mistake. That was very wrong. The reality is now the only thing that really matters for me in terms of viability, in terms of demonstrating that I'm competent, in terms of demonstrating I'm smart, is one metric: how much
Mhm.
money I've raised. So if I knew better, I would have I would have just done marketing and fundraising classes. I would have thrown the economic stuff out. But so when you have a system like that, it's easy to find yourself on the phone trying to position, not really do what you think is right or best, whether it is objectively or not. But it's like, how do I need to position myself to kind of get money? How do I need to
Mhm.
position myself to get on the website where I'm, where I'm in with, even if it's the Democrats that kind of have two big branches, they're more progressive and less progressive. How can I be with one of them? So you can really see how the pull is. The political action committees contact me. It'd be nice to get a check from one of them. They have a list of things that they want me to support. So it's a system of legalized bribery,
Mhm.
and that's objectively, I think, a fact. How do you get rid of that? It's difficult. I would support it though. I didn't
Mhm.
realize it was this bad, and I didn't actually have like a true plan to fix it. But now that I'm in it, I think
Yeah.
it's hard to fix, and it's hard. I don't know. I also think the American public. I shouldn't necessarily criticize the public, but the public could elect better leaders. Sometimes
Yeah.
we tolerate a lot of stuff as the public, and maybe we shouldn't. So that's
Yeah.
another thing.
Because it's not always the public's uh not necessarily responsibility, but it's not necessarily the public's fault because we know that these candidates often lie to the American people
Right.
just in order to get into office. So when they get into office and they don't do anything that they campaign for, like who's really at fault? And it sucks because people keep falling into the same trap over and over and over again at like every election. They elect someone that think that they're going to do a good job. They end up not doing the job that they got voted in to do, and now they're stuck with someone that's just going to be in office for like year after year after year.
Yeah, I mean, we tolerate the circus, you know,
Hmm.
and I think we have the system. It attracts like a, I don't know if it attracts the best type of person. It's some of these guys who would maybe be more boring
Hmm.
and maybe be more rational, more analytical. We're consumer driven. You can kind of even see it this most recent in the last few elections. We think about the wrapping paper and the bow more so than like with the substance of the package. And next thing you know, that our choices stink, and it's
Hmm.
kind of like, and now you're kind of in a lesser of two evils choice. Neither one is really good. They're both lying to you. They're both trying to spin it. So it is a bad system. I think hopefully I do believe in congressional oversight. I would like to have more congressional oversight. I believe that people say, oh, you only say that because Trump is your president. That's not true. I used to say that when Obama was president. You need a strong Congress. Remember, Republicans used to know that. They used to say Obama was an executive order tyrant.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, it's crazy how the world changes right under your feet. But so I think you have a stronger, more effective Congress that involves having a public that's going to vote for good people and having a system that can attract the right kind of candidate who's willing to go and do the work, not just be a yes man who's trying to fundraise. It's not easy. These are some of the real challenges that we're going to have.
And that's a dangerous part of it all because we're so divided as a country that uh, whether Trump's in office or a Democrat's in office, and you either support or are against their positions, that position in itself is divisive because now it just seems that you're partisan and just making excuses uh, for or against everything that they're doing. And
Right.
something that I've noticed with Trump, at least, is that he's doing basically everything opposite of what he ran on. And it's so easy to say, well, we wouldn't be in this mess if Kamala won because we don't know what the other person would have done in office. They wouldn't. I mean, it is a real possibility that they wouldn't have done anything that they campaigned for because we already know that they hardly even do 10% of their campaign promises while in office. So it's always easy to say this wouldn't have happened if what didn't happen happened, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, I have met Kamala. She's my friend, and but
Mhm.
we got Trump because some of the she was in as the number two person, and some of that was ineffective. So that's why they put Trump in there. So objectively, I don't think we had two good choices. That's a big part of why I wanted to run. It's been a long time now. I don't like what my government's giving me,
Yeah.
and I want to try to take it in a new direction, and that's kind of what I'm about. It's weird, Eric.
Yeah.
We have almost 90% of us have about the same issues. And even on some of these more divisive issues, I'm in a Republican area. So I just talked to some of the Republicans and I asked them about like what are the biggest dividers? So I don't know much about like abortion and stuff like that.
Right.
So I just asked them. I said, "Well, what like talk me through this." It's weird even on issues like that where you would think we're separated. Probably 80 or 90% of the stuff they would agree on. The Democrats and the Republicans actually agree. So I think it is done by design. They split us up into team red and team blue. Our media apparatus is very effective at doing that even across the world. So we're very good at kind of fanning the flame of division and having these distractions. And meanwhile, the real issues that actually affect us, we're worried
Mhm.
about other things. And we think we're divided. And really it's crazy that we're so divided because a lot of us have very similar issue. We're all living the same.
Mhm.
So
No, yeah, we definitely are. But I'm not going to fall into this dance of having to support this position because it's a Democrat position or having to support this position because it's a Republican position.
I agree.
I I like to I like certain positions no matter what side they're on. I've supported position on the left and I've supported positions on the right, and I'm not going to be a participant of this entire theater of like you either have to be on one side or the other. And I think as a country that is a huge issue that we're seeing, that you either support one position and fall in line with your party or you're out. And I
Right.
think that is really dangerous because we see it with Republicans and we see it with Democrats, especially in the House all the time, that you either have to vote this way or that way because you're either a Democrat or a Republican. But that's really dangerous because now you're loyal to the party and not to the
Mhm.
country.
Well, I have a legislative agenda that you basically just described. Some things I could probably put in front of a Republican and they like it, and Democrats might not, even though I'm running as a Democrat, and vice
Mhm.
versa. So, kind of going back to what I was saying before, I think what you just described is the type of person or the type of mindset that the people need to have, and hopefully encourage candidates who also think like that. Problem solving, analytical, not what they call partisan, not just team blue because it's blue or the other way. You got to vote we got to vote our interests now.
Mhm.
So I think that's I'm kind of speaking as a citizen there because I
Yeah.
hope that people vote and donate to me, of course. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
And I think what we really need to understand is uh, disagree or the option to disagree and see it as okay, we just have different opinions. And one
Right.
thing that I learned early on is that Democrats and Republicans, both parties, they just want what's best for the country. They just have different ways to go about it. So if I have a position and it's against the platform that you're running on, that's okay because we just have different opinions on how to fix issues. For example, you have a position for justice reform. I think that's a great idea. Now, how do we go about it? That could change. Also, with homelessness, like I have my idea of how to end homelessness. Like homelessness in itself is terrible, but I may have a different way to go about it than you, and that's okay. It's like, okay, so how do we come to the common ground? Because what we both want is how do we fix this issue? Your way could work, your way can work. I could bring certain ways to make it work, but we need to understand that's okay. Like, why would we fight over certain things? And another way that I see it is I didn't come up with these ideas. They're just ideas that have already been spoken, and I either agree with these ideas or I disagree with these ideas. And but these ideas are so ingrained into people's identity, they can't let go of them, and they're just married to these ideas that people just end up fighting, and nothing ever really gets done.
Right. I say that sometimes too. I say like, this is a solution to a problem that I didn't invent. I was born in the 90s like.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. It's these are policy discussions that if we
Hmm.
don't agree should be civil. And if you really think about what the country's about, it could be a good thing if we do it more constructively. So
Hmm.
the system set up where only really good ideas can rise, and sometimes like that gridlock, it's a the founders thought of it as a feature.
Yeah.
So that can slow us down in some ways, but the idea where you can have a minority interest that still gets a say, and
Hmm.
some of that stuff works. So I think we should embrace it. It's okay. You can have a debate, even an intense debate. We're still Americans with common goals, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, so let's talk about criminal justice reform. Like, how do you think we should go about that? Because, I have my own ideas, but I think the most important thing that we need to do is just end private prisons. Like, it's crazy that people make money, corporations make money to have people locked up. Like, that's crazy to me.
I certainly agree with that. I definitely agree with that. My policy priority was not stacking, or like when someone goes in to try to get them to have a plea. So a
Hmm.
lot of times they'll stack a bunch of charges that may not stick, and someone who that's going to disproportionately impact someone who doesn't have access to a lawyer, or a good lawyer, or a lawyer all the time. They're all maybe a
Hmm.
public defender who's limited in time, and they go to this guy and they say, hey, like, we're going to stick you with all this stuff, and they don't know what's going to stick and what's not going to stick. So they'll
Hmm.
take a plea, and that plea could be higher than what they would have gotten if they were better resourced legally.
Hmm.
So I think that's not a lot of people are in prison who never went to trial and were proven guilty. They just took the plea deal, and
Hmm.
sometimes they're manipulated that way. So that's one way, and another way is I've had a number of friends actually who had been arrested for things that they shouldn't have done,
Yeah.
but stuff that, like, I don't know if it should have ruined their life. and it kind of, I don't want to say it ruined their life, but it really was a big setback, even years
Mhm.
after when they were trying to rehabilitate themselves. So, um, expungement
Yeah.
and protection so that they can get in the workplace, at least in most cases. I do think we have to make it may be improving, compared to maybe 50 years ago, but I think there's still a ways to go, and we can help people be rehabilitated. We have to be the juvenile system is better for that. It's
Mhm.
focused on rehab, not punishment. So I think
Yeah.
just more broadly speaking, we have to think about rehab and not punishment. But
Yeah.
I agree on the private prisons thing. I've actually read a number of reports how it works, and it's bad, and you're setting up yourself up with bad incentives.
No, definitely. And I think that a lot of the issues come from having private prisons, even having a DA overcharge defendants. Like, I just have this feeling that it all comes from having or the incentive of incarcerating people. But then again, you have a lot of people that are not really educated on the justice system itself and how brutal the justice system will work to keep people that can't really afford a defense incarcerated. And
Right.
uh, that's really bad that we have this system that depending how good socioeconomically you are you going to end up in prison or not? Now, I think that we may differ in that I think we need to be tougher on crime, but we need to make it proportional because I
Mhm.
think we're very easy on crime, but if the charges don't meet the punishment, what are we doing there? Now we over punish people for minimal crimes, but then if someone commits a serious crime, then we're easier on that.
Mhm.
It's tough because now we get into an environment where there's a lot of disagreement that I could say like we need to be tougher on crime, and people may think, well, we're already tough enough, but there's certain things that could work.
Well, I think you're right. I actually agree with you on that.
Mhm.
So there are people in the Democratic Party who would maybe be, um, I don't know, who would not so much agree with us, but I agree with you. I think you need an effective. I think you need effective policing. Yeah, I wasn't like for defunding police, even though
Mhm.
there were obviously things in there that were correct. But
Yeah.
you need good, effective policing, and you have to have punishment. I like I just said, you want to be focused on rehabilitation, but you have to have real punishment. So for me, and I think we're to some extent like this, but what's important is certainty of punishment. Not
Right.
necessarily you don't have to hang somebody, but
Mhm.
you can if somebody knows like, look, if I do this and I get caught, I'm gonna get a punishment,
Yeah.
nobody's gonna come lobby for me to like. Now I think going back to kind of what we were saying before, if somebody does something on Team Red and it's wrong, Team Red's going to try to spin it so that it doesn't look so bad, and vice
Yeah.
versa. Team Blue is going to defend Team Blue even if they commit a crime. It's like, oh, my person's not. Maybe it's wrong, but so when you have a climate like that, I think that's no good. So you want people,
Mhm.
if you're no matter who it is, and that's another kind of thing I have. It's not really in my criminal justice section, but we
Yeah.
need to have basically in the judicial system. You mentioned having a two-tier legal system that's on financial lines.
Yeah.
And I think that exists more so in reality. But we need to have a partisanship also. Like Team Red is not correct just because it's Team Red. You shouldn't just like try to deflect off that and run your own stuff. They should be held accountable, and it should be a fair system across the board, basically. And that's like legally, but also it just also socially.
Mhm.
So if I'm gonna get arrested and something like that, and now I know I'm gonna have my pack of people who are gonna still I still think that contributes to bad behavior. So I,
Mhm.
I think we have to rethink kind of how we even look at it sometimes, not even in a legal structural sense.
Yeah. Like I live in Nevada here in Vegas, and there's been several cases that people get charged with murder and then they get set free. They even get bail. Like that's crazy to me. That
Mm.
if you commit a serious crime as such as murder, like the punishment should reflect that. But then if you commit, like petty theft, something not very serious, then people just get overcharged on that alone. I'm like, well, it should reflect that as well. But we still need to be tough on it, because if it keeps happening so much, like, what are we doing? Are we just letting people get away with certain crimes? So it's it's a very I guess even interesting topic to even discuss, because it, I think like the U.S. is so different, whatever state you're in, that what works in one state won't work in another state. And for a state, or say a city, a municipality that has a lot of crime, and it's not very effective in their laws, they should probably have more serious punishment. But somewhere that doesn't have as much serious crime wouldn't see the same effect on that. So it's really tough to even come to a conclusion like what works and what doesn't work. But I mean, to me, it just goes back to the private prisons. I think we need to start there and just abolish private prisons.
That's an interesting point. I was going to make also is it's difficult because the states have their own things, and even the municipalities can have different things. So it's difficult to just have a blanket standard for everybody. So it really is a challenging thing. Going back to abolishing private prisons, I actually think, maybe you can help them diversify their business. A lot of the
Mhm.
business models, they still do something else. Like the one that I was reading about, I don't want to say names, obviously, but the
Yeah.
if I might describe it and people can find it, they do like they were giving the Trump administration's some type of like surveillance equipment for being able to work at the border. So like there's other things they can do,
Mhm.
and maybe you can try to like phase out that. So you're not like killing the business, but you're trying to diversify them out of the private prison model, and you can have
Mhm.
them focus on other lines, that are maybe more constructive. So
Mhm.
maybe that's a solution that could possibly work.
Yeah, possibly, because if their entire business is concentrated in one sector, like in just this industry, like who really benefits from that? I mean, it's not the prisoners, because if they're incentivized to keep people locked up, people are going to continue being locked up. You don't want to get rid of that section of the business, just like the business of war. If you incentivize corporations to constantly be in war, we're constantly going to be in war. It's very similar to that.
Well, that's absolutely true. I I've mentioned that maybe we can help diversify some of them, some of
Mhm.
the war the we have corporations, and it's interesting. You can see now some of the shortcomings of it.
Yeah.
Where we've built our war. I'm not really pro-war, but I find it very interesting because people fight wars periodically, and there's
Mhm.
a real logistical component to it. And you can see how our logistics compared to some of the others are lacking, even though we have high quality because we've designed it for profit. It's been
Mhm.
designed for profit. And these other places, they haven't really done that. They can
Mhm.
make things a lot faster, a lot cheaper. They haven't gutted their industrial base in the name of
Yeah.
capitalism. So it's an interesting thing. And these Iranians are like now,
Mhm.
I don't want to jump ahead of you here, but
Yeah.
they're able to make a lot of stuff cheap, and we're
Mm.
shooting everybody knows the math. We're shooting multi-million dollar things at
Yeah.
$1,000 things, and we're not like that effective at hitting them even all the time. So it's kind of just like a tough the math doesn't work in our favor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, and we that's another thing. We just can't forget or just ignore the fact that this industry of war is the reason that we are pretty ahead in the game when it comes to manufacturing. It revolutionized our industry, during World War II. It really pushed that industrial revolution. So we just can't ignore that. Like, that's definitely true. But then it goes to an extent that, okay, so now there's so much money in war that there's a huge incentive to never end it. And I mean, a lot of people are going to die. So now,
yeah.
like, are we in the offensive or in the defensive? And it gets pretty bad when we're in the offensive and just attacking and committing all these war crimes, and that that could be very uh divisive in itself, like whether you consider something a war crime or not. But that's also tough as well.
Right. Well, it's an interesting. You're making a very interesting point. It's a complex point too.
Hmm.
So you have to still defend yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
But you're also making the point that, wait a second, like after like World War I, especially World War II, we boosted our productive capacity, and it took some time because remember, you couldn't buy gas here every day. You couldn't buy a new car here back in the 40s, like for a
Hmm.
couple years. So, but as those production lines came back to civilian life, all of a sudden we had a boom, big government spending. They kind of had the New Deal, and so between
Hmm.
those few things, in my view, my economic agenda, I don't say it like this to people, especially now that we're at war,
Hmm.
but we have to put our country on what is basically a wartime footing. But no
Yeah.
fighting, and do that here at home, domestically for our own production capacities. Whether it's rebuilding infrastructure, massive projects that are like interstate. And
Hmm.
for me, the number one thing that we should produce and develop farmland. We have a lot of farmland that's either eroded, degraded, or it's just here been grown up over like
Yeah.
the grandfather passed away and the kids didn't follow with it, and either it got bought in by somebody who's now doing timber with it, or it's just kind of overgrown now. So there's a lot of opportunity for things like that, home building, whatever. There's probably more that we could do, but I just want to focus on certain things for the government. But we
Hmm.
have to have that type of attitude and be more constructive about it and look to boost what we and that's how you solve the affordability problem here. That, in
Hmm.
my view, you're not getting prices down. You're gonna you're trying to get prices to go up slower than inflation over a period to have real price decreases. That can only be done by making things and providing value, not really focusing on the financial picture.
Yeah, and so now that's a really good point. And now, what do you think we should do about homelessness? Because that's another huge issue. And being from California, not necessarily the LA area where you see homelessness a lot, but I live in Vegas now, and there's a huge homeless issue here as well. And what do you think we could do? Because this is an issue that a lot of people could relate to all over the country.
For me, it's a simpler thing because it's not that. Now, in spots, it can look big, but if you look at the aggregate, I think we have only like a few 100,000 people that are what they call chronically homeless. So
Mhm.
it is not an unsolvable problem if we had the will to do it. And I would just put it in. It may not be perfect because regionally you would need to focus assets, and then some people might not want to go there. But if you lump it into healthcare, I want to obviously lower healthcare costs on the subsidy side, but you can't just do consumer stuff. You have to also, we have a doctor, nurse, hospital, medical facility, outpatient clinic shortage. And we have an aging population. So a lot of these REITs, they're companies that they don't really run they don't run the hospital, they don't run the skilled nursing center, but they own the real estate that does it. So a few of them they've diversified into big, and they're like large, almost like memory care for seniors, but they're for homeless people who need some type of.
Mhm.
In a lot of these cases, they need addiction treatment. They might need some type of mental health treatment. So you can have it staffed with doctors, and it can look a lot more like I mean, some type of assisted living. I don't know if you've ever seen like an assisted living community.
Mhm.
So that's how I would frame it. There's a couple companies that do that. Not all of them do. And that's how I would build it in. And you can pinpoint pockets around the country where they'd be good to make investments. Does it get everybody off the street? Probably not, but you could probably make a lot of progress and give people the care and attention they need, of course, at lower no cost to them, basically. And so that's how I would tackle it. I'd look at it
Yeah.
through the healthcare lens and try to design a build out kind of that way.
Yeah, and another issue that a lot of people don't really think about is the people behind these companies that are making money as for having homelessness be uh, be a thing, because we can't also ignore that there's people out there making hundreds of thousands of dollars in these positions to try to end homelessness. When you incentivize people to keep homelessness
Right.
active, they don't have the incentive to end it because now they're enriching themselves. And that could possibly be a thing because I read an article once and it talked about how homeless people were being gathered together and being put into these facilities and basically just defrauding. I think it was Medicaid that was paying for it. I may be wrong, but I think that's what who was paying for it. And now you have this funnel that these people are making money um, from homeless people or from like homelessness itself. So we also need to fix that, and that's a loophole that, I mean, what do we do about that?
Well, I will say this, and this goes beyond just homelessness. There are some
Mhm.
problems, in my view, that the federal government they don't have to do everything, but we have to lead. We have to set a direction. We have to have at least some investment capital involved, like our energy grid. You can't just sit around it. Well, first of all, the companies tell us that they need help, but there's a number of problems. Healthcare infrastructure, homelessness. Like I said, the grid, developing farmland, trying to have broader asset ownership. Some of these problems we really should have a plan here, and this is one of them. And so I hope that we can help. I do think this is a much more solvable problem, at least to reduce it. Maybe you don't get 100% of it,
Mhm.
but you could really make strides with some targeted investment and some intentionality coming from your federal government. Work with the states, have the healthcare, mental health, addiction treatment service as a feature, and I think it's something that could definitely work.
Yeah, and then another thing is that we need to look at it at the individual level. There's just some people that just don't want the help, no matter how much you
Right.
try to give it to them. So another thing is looking into that and looking into how we could change that, because as a person that is focusing on the aggregate and just getting the numbers down, now we need to focus on the individual itself and how do we make individuals change their individual behaviors to try to end this, because it's one of those problems that once you end up in that situation, you don't really know anything different from being in that situation, and everything around you is that you hang around with other people that are in the same situation, so it starts to feel like this new normal to you,
Hmm.
and you don't know what it is to have a stable job, to have a stable income, because all you know is to be homeless and to survive as a homeless person.
That's absolutely true. And I, in reality, I do think my job is to look at the aggregate, but my job is also to identify people to execute the job. So you need someone who really expresses exactly what you did. You need to find people who can execute your direction, who have that exact view, and who want. And in reality, looking at it the way I would, some people are going to get left behind for one reason or another, but you really want to have people executing the vision that don't want that. They want to save everybody, so to speak. So I think that's the right attitude.
Yeah, because that's another problem, that you have politicians that have a good idea or good ideas to solve certain issues, but now you're looking at the aggregate of just fixing these issues, but it's more complex than that because there's so many moving parts. And like how to end homelessness,
Right.
you just don't end homelessness because you want to end it. You need to focus on the specifics on, because everyone is different. You may be dealing with so many different people, and you want to, or you may want to help them with mental health, but it's a serious problem. People actually have mental health issues, and it could be something that just developed over time. It could be something that developed because of their environment, their maybe their childhood. It could have been induced by drugs. So there's many different reasons that they could be facing these issues. So it's not as simple as just snapping your fingers and fixing issues. Now you focus on justice reform, you focus on homelessness, you focus on affordability, but it's so complex that there needs to be certain ways to make sure to basically get bad people out of the equation and get good people in, because there's people that are just in this for their own like to line their own pockets and just for their own benefit, or maybe even like they want to appear as good people. But we need to actually be doing changes that reflects net positive.
Definitely. And I think you're touching on actually an intelligent point. You always have to have mechanisms for mid-course adjustment. So
Mhm.
you're going to do something. It's very complex. It's going to be to some degree wrong. So you have to like have an idea of, not that you're going to be knee-jerk reaction with it, but all right, this is the direction I'm going, and now I'm going to look for these data points or these qualitative things, and to the extent that they show up or don't show up, I know I could, maybe you can try to plan how you could adjust. Maybe I'll do a little more of this, a little less of that. And so the having the humility to be able to recognize that it's complicated, we have problems. Even if you try to fix it, you're not going to fix it all the way. You might have another problem come up. So, going back to what we said at the beginning, I think you need politicians who aren't gonna say, team red is great, team blue is great, and
Mhm.
it's the best. It's not. It's hard. It's challenging, and we're going to continue having problems, and we're going to have new problems. So, you just have to be real about that and do your best to wake up every day and make intelligent decisions.
Yeah, because I've sat in rooms with certain people that have been part of these coalitions, and I remember them going over a list of demands that they wanted. This was for city council and for the mayor's office, and I remember sitting down there and saying like, "Okay, this is all great, but how are we even going to go about this?" And
Right.
and I mean, the ideas were great, but logistically, it sounded like it was hard to implement. And they just said, well, we don't know. That's why we elected them for them to figure out. I'm like, yeah, but that's not how things really work. Like, we need to be realistic on what we want. And this is all great and all, but it's really hard to just implement, because who wouldn't want certain things to get passed? But how do we go about it? And it's one thing for it to really be worked on, and another thing to change the society's perspective, because there are certain things that, let's just be real, people are not really keen to change and push back a lot on change. They like things being how they are. So it's just one thing to actually implement change, and another thing for people to understand that this might be the right move to make.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think you're definitely making a good point there. And to your point, so I do have like a little legislative agenda. I tried to
Mhm.
simplify it on my website. I built it so that everything was like in the system. You're not reinventing the wheel, and it's stuff
Mhm.
that is like to some degree doable. Try to touch on the needs, and actually have like a real policy or a legislative plan to do it. Like, can this get passed with a simple majority? How much would it cost? So, like, I did try to think about that, but it's challenging. Going back to wanting to build your energy grid, I mean, there it depends on who you talk to. Obviously, people have different views, and the companies will say different things too. But if we went to the max and just said we're going to go after it 100%, I mean, we probably don't even have enough building like aluminum, for example. We
Yeah.
need to have high quality aluminum shipped in. So it's, I mean, it's like, okay, we're going to fix everything this year. I mean, you couldn't do that. Maybe
Mhm.
you do have the workforce or don't have the workforce. You can bring people in, but you're gonna have to call somebody and say, we need you to send us, even if we use all the aluminum for that.
Right.
You need it to ship this. So there are constraints, obviously, definitely. And yeah, I hope I can embody somebody who recognizes those things and
Yeah.
doesn't oversell.
And
I do think we can make progress though. I definitely do think we can move in the right direction, but it's a process. It's just a slow grind, and I'm only going to do it for so long, so it's going to be somebody else's problem. I'm
right.
just kidding.
And I mean, another thing that we just can't forget is how many members of Congress are there? 535, right?
No, no, no. In the House, there's four. I should know the exact. It's like 400 something in the House, and then there's like 100 in this, 100 or so in the Senate.
So
I think it's
about
100 in the Senate.
over 500 people. And
Yeah.
so another thing that we need to understand is that you have this entire legislative body that needs to agree on certain issues, and I can't even get my group of friends to agree on anything, let alone over 500 people on one thing. And when you think about it that way, it's hard to make any real change.
Well, what we were talking about before, uh, what were we saying? Criminal justice, probably. Like some of
Mhm.
those things, it's even harder than what you're saying because sometimes you can pass with just a simple majority. So if
Yeah.
Democrats get control, we can get 51 votes in the Senate and pass it.
Mhm.
But that's only for like that's only for what's called budget reconciliation. You get
Yeah.
to do that once a year. So most of the time you need 60 votes. So that means
Mhm.
you would either need to have major control, you need to have a big control,
Mhm.
or you would need some Republicans to come to you. That doesn't, I mean, like, is that even realistic in today's
Mhm.
day? I don't know. So it's even harder. Now you're limited on what you can do to get, you can maybe pass the House if you
Yeah.
control the House, but you can't get it into law because the Senate won't pass it. So it's even harder still.
Yeah, and that's another thing, because you could get things passed over just a simple majority, say 51% of the votes, but then you're in this constant cycle every 2 years that
Right.
the House could change, and it's never ending because you could have 2 years of a Democrat controlled House and Senate, and then the other 2 years it could flip. So that's another thing that you need to think about. That it's because we're talking about a slim majority, so
Right.
slim that it's constantly changing.
I wish I could like modeling out some of the stuff I want to do. I wish I could just say, oh, like on a 12-year path, on a 15-year path. American politics isn't that consistent. Like if you're lucky, you're going to get 6 years, you know? So like really you're
Yeah.
going to get 2 years and then you're going to lose the House and you're going to be kind of at least stuck in the mud. Then you're going to lose everything that you know what I mean? Then they're going to
Mhm.
try to actually literally undo what you did. So move you
Mhm.
back 2 years after that. Maybe you can make up some ground after 2 more years. You can get the House back and kind of slow them down. It's just it's terrible. And meanwhile, we're competing with Chinese engineers who don't have to
Mhm.
do that. And you know, at some of these other countries, they can just do what they want, and or not. I mean, to more. And there's drawbacks to that too. So I'm not necessarily saying we should change, but if we get a good idea and China does, the board of directors votes on it, and they're doing it at the top level,
Mhm.
and we it's harder for us to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing is that China doesn't have as many regulations as we do, so they have a competitive advantage in being able to produce much more technology than we are able to. And another thing I like to say is that when people say, by now I thought that we would have had flying cars. I'm like, yeah, and that's possibly true if it wasn't for regulations.
We're doing pretty good. I mean, we our technology is pretty good, you know, but I do think that's a funny statement though. But you know what I think it is about China that makes them so difficult to compete with? It's this is going to sound kind of simple, but they have a plan. I don't know how closely you follow them. I do. They're our
Mhm.
peer competitor. I try to watch what they do. And they come out with these every 5 years, they have like a 5-year plan. And
Mhm.
they're not really trying to compete with anybody. It's
Mhm.
fascinating. They look at themselves and they say these are like this is kind of what we can do. They're not trying to produce more oil than Saudi Arabia. They know they can't do that. They're not trying to do things that we do. But that's not for them. So they said
Mhm.
these are our advantages. Let's see if we can make progress here. And they do that with an eye on the global markets. And they so not only are they kind of like developing their own domestic infrastructure and base and stuff like that, but they're developing durable competitive positions in world markets. And that's not to be exactly like them, but we have to think that way. We have to think about how can we do things. We've lost our competitive position in the world to a significant extent
Mhm.
if you go back to World War II. And for me, going back to what my agenda is, farming, the ability to produce food, the ability to develop these export markets, with production lines that countries are going to want. If you have currency destabilization, like the dollar is no longer the reserve, you can still do your thing with food production. If China's Wang, the digital RMB, takes over, and you move to cryptocurrency 100 years, so there's some things you want to develop a moat. You want to develop things that are going to have value no matter what in the world, to have that. So that's what we need to do. That's what China's done. And we kind of, the Democrats have given you nothing. They give you the consumer side. That's my view. And Republicans give you the production side, but their plan is like, just sit back and don't take any action. Just let the private do it. And that has its limitations. So we need to maybe have a little political innovation.
Oh yeah, and I think one thing that's holding us back is that we just fight with ourselves so much that we are facing real threats from other countries internationally, but we're so distracted by our own infighting, especially with the midterms and the presidential election every 4 years, that we're constantly in this fight that never ends in beating the other side within ourselves, that we're facing real issues globally.
Yeah, I've kind of said it this way. It's not, Americans are very smart, but we've allowed ourselves to be ignorant of the world. And it's because we can be. We have the two big oceans. If you're a European, you don't have that luxury. I mean, if you go a few miles this way, you're in a new currency. You're in a new country. So they have a different view. Like, they understand currency pairings a lot better than an American. We're insulated from a lot of that stuff. It's a huge competitive advantage. But so as things move in the world, it's like people are kind of waking up to the fact now. It's like, wait a second, it's not the unipolar moment the way it was, and these other things are. You can see what they call the global South, the global minority. They're developing. They're coming. You see what's gone on in the Middle East now. You see what's gone on in Russia, China. So you have sophisticated, advanced civilizations that are different from us, but that it's not like we can't just put our foot on the scale and tip it the way that maybe we once did. I mean, there's things out there that now have clout, no pun intended. And so we have to fit into that. We should be competitive, but we got to recognize we're a big fish among other big fish now.
Yeah.
We're not the only big fish in the pond anymore.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to having different opinions and just being okay with that. Like, it's okay to have different beliefs in what we could do, and not let that distract us from the fact that we are facing real issues from other countries, and having this constant infighting could probably bring us to a halt while we figure out what the hell is going on here. Well, other countries take that competitive advantage, and we have the capabilities to have that competitive advantage globally. And we've kind of let that go by believing that we've been great for so long that we don't really have the need to continue being great. It's like going into a fight and thinking that the follow up to the fight, like, oh yeah, I'm going to beat the other guy, and then letting go of your guard and end up losing that fight. I think we're in the same position. Like, yeah, America is the greatest country in the world, and saying it for so long that we are more focused on saying that than actually being that.
That is so true. I've said that we are the champion. We're the world heavyweight champion, and we are kind of sloppy and lazy. We think we can just hum the national anthem. That's economic policy. Sing "God Bless America." That's foreign policy. It's like, no. You got to train. Get up, do the speed bag, run a few miles a day. So it's definitely true. Though the thing that I don't know if maybe I'm being too optimistic. I don't like to be optimistic, but this war now with Iran, I do hope. It seems like a lot of even Republicans don't support it, especially the younger ones. So hopefully there's a wanting, a desire in the American public to not be out interfering. I hate our foreign policy. Not be out disrupting in the world. Focus on ourselves. Yeah, we're going to have our disagreements. Your idea might win out over mine, but we can do things here. But the focus should be here and on how we can more constructively participate in the world.
I totally agree with that. But, it's been great having this conversation with you. And, I wish you the best of luck in your campaign. I know it's very tough, especially being in that district that you are and running against an incumbent. I mean, it's tough, but real change needs to happen. And our current body of government is not doing the change that we need.
Absolutely. I appreciate, thank you for inviting me on again. And I'd love to come back at some point. I wish you the best too. Actually, you have a very good podcast. I've watched a couple episodes. You have very intelligent guests. So I hope I hope I didn't let your audience down too much, but thank
No,
you
you're great.
again for inviting me.
Well, thank
And
you.
hopefully we talk again soon.
Hopefully.